This channel is part of the History Hit network.
This is Pentillie Castle in Cornwall, one of Britain's most spectacular estates. For nearly 30 years, it's been hidden from the world by a reclusive widow who banned even her closest relatives from visiting. Last year, Ted and Sarah Coryton inherited this neglected estate and a £6 million inheritance tax bill. Can businesswoman Ruth Watson help Pentillie and open it up to the great British public?
It looks as if everything is very behind, is that right?
Yeah, it is a bit.
Sarah does have an emotional take on this whole estate.
Ruth, I'm deeply upset. No, don't come any minute. No, I'm really upset. Don't film this, thank you.
Pentillie is a Grade II listed castle and 2,000-acre estate in Cornwall. It was built in 1698 in this commanding position overlooking the River Tamar. For nearly 30 years, Ted and Sarah Coryton have lived just a mile from Pentillie, wondering if one day it would be theirs.
Belonged to a cousin of mine who was married but had no heir, and he rang us up out of the blue in about 1977 and asked us if we'd come down and help him run the place because he didn't know anything about farming and there was quite a lot of land.
You didn't either.
No, I didn't.
To inherit, the deal was that Ted would run one of Pentillie's farms for his cousin Geoffrey and gradually take over the estate. But when Geoffrey died unexpectedly in 1980, his widow, Kit, withdrew from the world and banned Ted and his family from the castle.
So she just decided to become a recluse and shut the house up and told me never to come back here again.
The news was devastating for Ted and Sarah. Over the next 27 years, their family grew up in the shadow of Pentillie, which remained out of bounds and became a subject too painful for discussion. But in September 2007, Kit passed away and left the estate to Ted.
I suddenly thought that's going to rock the boat a bit, change life, and I'm going to have to make some decisions.
Having been the cause of so much heartache, the Corytons planned to sell Pentillie and take the money. But when Ted, Sarah, and their 3 grown-up children came to see the castle, they fell under its spell.
They all came in at separate times and just said, we've got to go with this.
The decision to take on Pentillie landed them with a massive £6 million inheritance tax bill.
History Hit is a streaming platform that is just for history fans, with fantastic documentaries covering fascinating figures and moments in history from all over the world. We've got unrivaled access to the world's leading historians, with hundreds of documentaries featuring everything from Boudica to the British royal family. We're committed to bringing history fans award-winning documentaries and podcasts that you cannot find anywhere else. Sign up now for a free trial, and Real Royalty fans get 50% off their first 3 months. Just be sure to use code REALROYALTY at checkout.
The house is in need of serious restoration, and the estate has become overgrown and neglected. For the Corytons, the experience has been emotional and life-changing.
I worry about it because it's such a wonderful thing to have actually been left, but you suddenly get very frightened. Having sort of been through so much as a family over the last 27 years, what I really feel passionately about is that suddenly having material possessions doesn't destroy us.
So they've called on Ruth Watson for advice.
The British Country House is an institution that's under a very real threat. I'm determined to bring my business expertise to bear to help save these historic houses and estates, make them pay their way and preserve them for the future.
Self-made businesswoman Ruth owns a hotel and restaurant empire in Suffolk and has turned around the fortunes of numerous country houses, including Hintlesham Hall, which she transformed from a crumbling pile into a multi-million-pound business. Today, Ruth is on her way to Cornwall to meet Ted and Sarah and help them find a way to make Pentillie pay.
Ruth. Nice
How
to
do you
meet
do?
you.
And Ted?
Yes.
Very good to meet you.
Well,
This is a very fine house, isn't it? If a little austere from this side.
It is. There's not very much sort of softness and greenness or plants or anything growing up at all.
No, well, I'd love to see inside it.
Her investigation starts with a tour of the formal rooms.
Come on in, Ruth. We're going to go into the drawing room in all its grey glory.
Beautiful with the double aspect and so light, isn't it? It's lovely.
It's a very, very sunny room. When I came in on my own for the first time, I was absolutely amazed at my sort of feelings because I felt as soon as we can get rid of it, the better. And I sort of came in and the sun was shining and I just thought, wow, actually, this is all quite a different... it gave me a good feeling.
And you couldn't be tempted to live here?
I couldn't afford to.
Quite cold as well.
Well, I'm afraid we can't quite afford the heating yet, so stand closer to the fire.
Ted wasn't born a Coryton. Cousin Geoffrey's widow, Kit, demanded Ted change his surname to match theirs in order to inherit Pentillie, causing a rift between Ted and his father.
And he said, well, if you change your name, I shall disinherit you.
So he did.
And did. So there's been a lot of strife in the past.
It's heavy-duty stuff.
Oh, it's really taken us by storm and full of raw emotions now.
So does that matter to you, the notion of not disposing of it because it would go out of the family?
It's a bit sad to be the person who couldn't be bothered to try. So I think that we'll try.
Pentillie's taken an emotional toll on the family. Now it's set to take a financial one too. Ted and Sarah have had to cash in their pensions and sell parts of the estate to pay off the inheritance tax. The Corytons' 3 children also have a share in Pentillie, including eldest daughter Sammy.
Let's do some nuts and bolts. You inherited in September, but you have incurred a horrible taxation bill, haven't you? Inheritance tax.
Yes. Yeah.
And could we know how much that is and how long do you have to pay it?
It's about 6 million. And you've got to say it quickly, it doesn't hurt so much then.
Why don't you just sell it?
We were offered a cheque for it fairly soon after we inherited it, and friends said to us, you have a choice. You can either sit at Pentillie in your beaten-up old Land Rover looking at our farm at Tinnell, or sit at Tinnell in your smart Bentley looking at Pentillie. So we're really happier in the Land Rover, I think. It suits our style better. And anyhow, what would we do with the money?
The Corytons have decided to continue living at their nearby farm and invest their remaining funds to establish Pentillie as a family business. They want to let it out for house parties and weddings.
What thoughts and plans have you had about how this could be made to pay its way?
Being able to put up at least sort of 16 people.
Sort of more that exclusive country house rental. It's big enough, but at the same time cosy enough that if you were going to get married here, you might bring your immediate family, all stay for 4 or 5 days beforehand, have the wedding.
We've got 2 wonderful retired architects who've spent hours and hours and hours redesigning the house so that we can make the 8 bedrooms.
Why do you think I can help at all?
Because
I've got the answer to that. Because we actually have no idea which direction we're going. And actually I think we need someone to help us. Which way is the right way to start?
Whip you into shape.
Yeah.
it's the disadvantage of having 3 children and therefore 5 of us involved in it, because no decision-making process is simple.
This family is a joy and they exude so much warmth. It ought to be enough to heat the house. The problem is that they're going full steam ahead with loads of ideas, none of which they've really thought through. And I think this is just a question of really picking the best ones and actually making plans that are viable, because I want this family to keep this house and to make a really good business out of it.
Pentillie clearly has potential. But are the Corytons prepared to take Ruth's no-nonsense advice on board?
There is a tendency to revisit decisions that have already been made.
There might have to come a time when one of the children who isn't here has to just shut up.
Ted and Sarah Coryton are the new owners of Pentillie Castle and its estate in Cornwall. With elegant hallways and a formal drawing room, this historic house is perched high above the Tamar Valley. Surrounding it is a 2,000-acre estate of farmland and landscaped grounds, including a walled kitchen garden and numerous handsome cottages. High above the river, on Mount Ararat, sits an imposing mausoleum, built to house the final remains of Sir James Tilley, for whom the house was built in 1698. 3 centuries later, the estate has been inherited by Ted and Sarah, along with a £6 million tax bill.
I'm determined to help the Corytons come up with a financially viable plan that brings Pentillie out of the shadows and allows everyone to enjoy its glory.
Ruth Watson's helping the Corytons turn historic Pentillie into a going concern after years of neglect.
This is the amazing mausoleum.
Yes, this is where Jimmy, as we call him, but Sir James Tilley...
That's very familiar.
...wanted to spend his last days on Earth. He was always convinced that he wouldn't be dead for very long and would return to Pentillie, so he demanded that he was put in his favourite chair, wearing his favourite clothes, and that the servants would give him food and drink twice a day.
So he didn't get buried?
No, he was just sat in the chair, wired to it, so that he didn't slump in his seat, and the servants did what they were told for 2 years.
You are kidding.
And eventually the villagers couldn't take it any longer and they buried him.
Mad Jimmy wanted to sit here surveying all he possessed and owned, and your cousin came and did the reverse. He planted these conifers to...
Yes, he did. The mausoleum showed up very well from the river and across the river, and the cousin wanted the estate to be private.
Right.
They're dreadful, aren't they? They spoil the view.
And you would be happy to cut them down?
Oh, absolutely, yes.
And in general, your whole viewpoint about the house and the estate is to open it, to be more open to everyone.
Yes, it's pretty selfish for just us to enjoy it, isn't it? It's part of Cornwall, and
I
people
like
should
that
enjoy it.
attitude, Ted.
Glad of that.
In 1809, the gardens were completely remodelled by Humphrey Repton, a famous landscape designer. And although his plans for Pentillie were never fully carried out, they are documented in a very special book.
The joy of this Pentillie book is that it's never been seen by anybody. It's been under lock and key, and to find it still here and not having been burnt and destroyed along with other treasures, it's wildly exciting. So I'm just still exploring it myself. And the sort of thing that he did, where he drew, for example, a design of what the gardens were, and then he painted and pasted over what the garden, with these wonderful sort of flip backs, what the garden then sort of might be. That's what it was. That's what he designed. So that, I reckon, is probably a national treasure.
So far, only the house has figured in the Corytons' business plans. But a brief tour of the gardens reveals how much potential they have.
So these gardens are just stunning, and everywhere I go, I find something else that's even more amazing than the bit before. I mean, this lime walk, for example, I mean, it's just beautiful.
It is. This was, in fact, the old front drive. So all the carriages would come down and come on down through. And it's actually cobbled underneath the sort of mulch that you see here. It is, it's very, very lovely, very special.
So, I mean, these gardens have been hidden away. You're discovering them.
Yes.
How do you feel about that?
I'm incredibly excited. What I do realise is that my knowledge of gardens is pretty limited, and so I'm up for learning and exploring, and maybe I shall soon be quoting lots of Latin names.
The family may not have experienced anything like this before, but their enthusiasm is infectious.
Presumably you're still in a process of discovery, aren't you?
It's quite exciting. It feels every time it's like, ooh, secret garden.
This once productive kitchen garden used to be run by 6 staff working full-time and supplied the house with all its fruit and vegetables.
If this could be back to how it was 100 years ago, that would be absolutely a dream come true.
But thus far, the Corytons' business plans have concentrated on the house instead of the gardens. They're keen to turn it into an exclusive venue for weddings and house parties. So Ruth heads off to find out if it's suitable.
What is it about people who live in grand houses that they've got to collect dead animal detritus? That is repulsive. much more lovely is the room itself. This is all facing out, looking out over the Tamar, and it's just beautiful. The view, even in a misty day, it's staggeringly lovely. I think this would be a wonderful room to have as your pre- or post-bridal night.
The Corytons have big ideas for sweeping changes throughout the house. But with all 5 family members involved in the design process, the plans have already been subject to frequent changes.
You like the bath?
Actually, in a funny kind of retro way, I do.
If you look at the plans here, the children have insisted that that becomes a bathroom.
So this set of plans has already been superseded by another set.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
One of the things that is slightly bothering me is that there's a lot of changes, a lot of discussion amongst the family, and then everyone throws it all up in the air again and it all lands down and then we change it again.
There is a tendency to revisit decisions that have already been made.
There might have to come a time when one of the children who isn't here has to just shut up.
Right.
Despite the family's undoubted enthusiasm, it's clear that the Corytons have to make a master plan and get in professional help if they're to make the most of this extraordinary estate.
This is just lovely. This is the bathing house and it's so beautiful. It's where modest Victorians would have come to change before they got in the water. Everything about this estate is really magical. I mean, I'm so impressed with it. There's hidden things and wonderful things, and it's beautiful, and I really think more needs to be made of it. This is not just for local delectation, this is for national admiration. It's just wonderful.
To get some ideas on how the Corytons could be making more of their incredible estate, Ruth heads off to a nearby success story.
I'm on my way to see a garden that's not only the most visited private garden in the UK, but perhaps with greater significance for Pentillie, it's also the largest garden restoration in Europe.
Like Pentillie, the lost gardens of Heligan fell into a terrible state of neglect. But that all changed 10 years ago when a group of enthusiasts took on the garden's restoration. Now it makes a healthy profit. Ruth gets the lowdown from Peter Stafford, the managing director.
So what are the visitor numbers nowadays?
They're fairly consistent at around 250,000 to 300,000, but they've grown from literally zero when we opened to that figure.
Pentillie's gardens couldn't be made into a visitor attraction of this scale overnight. But Ruth's keen to find out whether they could tap into this lucrative market without spending a fortune.
How, in the early days, did you fund the restoration of the gardens?
Entirely out of visitor income.
Really?
And can cut our cloth according to that. But as I say, in the very early days, we decided we would run with what we could afford.
The gardens clearly have potential, but does the castle? If the Corytons are going to do exclusive rentals, they could learn a thing or two from the Barnes family, owners of Luyton Lodge. They converted their historic property into luxury accommodation for house parties 5 years ago. And so far, it's proved to be extremely successful.
Was it important to you to be the hosts?
I think somehow or other that there needs to be a host.
The guests like it, actually, that there's a family feel, but there's always a point where you have to be careful to get the balance right. You know, so you're a host, and yet when they come, it's their place.
Luyton Lodge has a turnover of £500,000 a year, and the Barneses believe that this is down to a clear business plan and the right amount of rooms.
You've got 10 bedrooms, that suggests 20 people. Is that a kind of magic number? Do you think it's important?
I think it's a very good number.
Yeah.
It certainly has proved the case for us. You can get bigger and bigger, but 10 seems to be perfect.
Ruth returns with all the information she needs to advise on Pentillie's future.
Hello.
First up, she's concerned that the Corytons don't have a master plan for Pentillie, or the expertise to execute it.
Everything about this place is, to my mind, bigger than you think it is. And I think you're coming at it as a very amateur night out, sort of little hobby kind of thing. I'd like all of you, including the absent siblings, to actually write down what you think you can bring to the party. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses as individuals? Yeah? And how much time and effort you're prepared to contribute. So the first thing is, I want you to organise yourselves as people, right? What do you bring to the party? What are your skills? What do you think you can contribute? And what do you absolutely know you can't or won't contribute? And it's from that point that you will know what kind of expertise you need to bring in. You know, you have just got to raise your game. I don't think you realise that you're very rich people. You've been used to being paupers. You're not paupers anymore.
I find that pretty uncomfortable.
Ruth thinks there's merit in their idea of renting the castle for exclusive stays, but sleeping just 16, it's a little on the small side.
What seems to be the zeitgeist is that the number is around 20. So I'd like you to look at, again, the estate and the cottages that are on it to see whether you could possibly add in a bit more accommodation, maybe another 2, 3, 4 rooms, that by marketing it as a really exclusive, upmarket, very, very chic place to come, then you actually could get a substantial amount of money from it. That bathing house. I mean, to have the honeymoon suite down there, you know, with, I mean, I want to get married again. It's just, it's just so beautiful.
But if they want to attract high-end guests, they'll need to give the castle a facelift.
I think the front of the house is very, very off-putting. Changing the paint colour, I think, is an absolute necessity.
So far, all the Corytons' efforts have focused on the house. But Ruth has a radical idea that could provide substantial income.
I went off to Helligan, and I can truthfully say that actually I think this is possibly has the potential for being greater, more stupendous than Helligan. I think it is absolutely amazing where you are here in the situation. The public seeing a restoration in progress with limited access at the beginning, but that actually opening up and you bringing them with you can be hugely successful and actually, as I say, can be a revenue maker. I think this is, you know, bordering on a national treasure. And certainly the gardens, I think, could actually be an international treasure dealt with in the right way. I really believe that in a 2 or 3 year period, we could get an income of between 1 and 2 million out of this place.
That's amazing.
Yeah, well, real beginners, real amateurs, and probably what's going to have to become a professional game.
I had absolutely no idea at all that we could generate that amount of income.
So quite daunting. How do we select the right people to help us? Lots of gin going to be drunk.
Less than a week after Ruth's visit, the Corytons are already going full steam ahead. Ruth was concerned that they didn't have the expertise to deal with a project of this scale, but the family are keen to get cracking on the restoration. The house is stripped of its austere paint, and dangerous trees are felled throughout the estate. Jonathan Mansfield is an architect and friend of the family who's come out of retirement to help the Corytons redesign the house. But despite revising the plan several times already, the family have decided they want yet more modifications.
All well and good having your gorgeous, fabulous, massive suite, and then you have a bathroom that you can barely swing a cat. You couldn't even get the cat in the bathroom, let alone swing it.
It is small, there's no doubt about it, but you know, the concept was that there would be 2 bedrooms there, and only a small bathroom. But you know, I'm very happy. I listen to you. I understand what you want.
Yes, I mean, the house is going to be here for the next 100 years. Let's get it right. If we have to ask Jonathan to draw another set of plans, I'm sorry, Jonathan.
Even the ancestors aren't exempt from the Coryton sweeping changes. In a hugely symbolic moment, Ted and Sarah are saving Sir James Tilley's decaying statue and sending him off to be restored.
I'd be quite sad to see him go, really.
Yeah, I know. He's got a face look on his face that says, "Oh, please don't touch me like that."
I just want to stand beside him to see. I've always wondered how high he was. About the same height. Family resemblance.
The times may be changing at Pentillie, but after decades of heartache, can the Corytons cope with what the future holds? Or will their emotions get the better of them?
really upset. Don't film this, thank you.
Why are you?
No, I don't want to be filmed. I'm not going to be filmed.
Tell me why.
The Coryton family have recently inherited the Pentillie estate in Cornwall, along with a host of financial troubles and responsibilities. It's 2 months since her last visit, and Ruth Watson is back to see if Ted and Sarah took her advice to develop a master plan for Pentillie.
She made me sort of feel that I've got to stop being so emotional about it all, and it's got to pay for itself. It's got to be commercial, and I've got to get a bit grown up about it.
Ruth was concerned that the family were trying to do too much themselves, so she's anxious to hear what progress has been made.
Sarah, Ted, hello, hi, how are you?
Good,
well?
thank you. Very
Yes,
well,
hello.
thank you.
How are things going?
All right, I think.
I see your guardian, Sir James, has been replaced by a rather small gnome.
Rather a small person.
We couldn't find a bigger one.
Ted has been dealing with a staggering amount of work.
They're really cracking on here, aren't they, at the back?
Yes, we're taking all the paint that's on top of the render
Yes.
off, and then we can repair the cracks and repaint.
Yeah.
But we've repointed most of these walls.
Lisa, looks fantastic. That's a really nice job. So with all the work going on, have you decided what kind of colours that you're going to repaint?
Well, as you can imagine, there has been a certain amount of debate over on that.
Huge amount of debate, I think. It's a big, big decision to make.
And I thought we'd paint a panel with that and just see how it looks.
What?
And the other alternative is this one, which is slightly more caramelly.
I would definitely not go with that one because I think that is actually just bland, basically. I think that's a cop-out colour. And I think you actually can be quite bold with this. It's got such strong shape, you know. I mean, and with the castellation along the top, and it's such a handsome house, you know. And I think having a pretty colour will both feminise it, but also I think it can take it.
The Corytons ought to get expert help to make the final decision. Elsewhere, Ted's been busy.
We couldn't see through there before, could we?
No.
That's so lovely.
I went mad with a chainsaw one day and...
But it's lovely because it brings the river right up to the bottom of the grounds, doesn't it? I mean, before it was somewhere over there.
Yep.
They may have been cracking on, but Ruth wants to find out if the family have got themselves properly organised.
Has everyone sort of taken on a role, or do you know who's going to be involved and who's not going to be involved?
we followed your advice and we now know who's doing what.
Yeah, and what's your job?
Well, I seem to be the foreman at the moment. I don't think I've ever worked so hard.
Clearly, Ted has taken on a great deal of work, and he's not the only one who's been hard at it. Sarah shows Ruth their progress elsewhere in the garden.
You have been busy bees.
The tree fellas have been very, very busy. Sadly, we've had to take down about 49 trees, I think. They were all, sadly, dead, dying, or extremely dangerous.
How many years do you think before the public can come in?
The Cornwall Garden Society are going to actually come in October to see before.
Right.
And then it'll sort of go from there.
After being shut away for 3 decades, the public will finally be able to see Pentillie's splendour. But are the Corytons ready to let them in?
In principle, you're happy to share the garden with the public and to let them see the progress that you're making. But do you feel even a bit trepidatious about that?
Much better than I was, much better than I was. I felt quite territorial when we were talking about it. And I think what has really happened is that people who've been here have been so unbelievably enthusiastic. And I feel it's got to be something that's got to be shared.
Ted and Sarah have energy and enthusiasm in abundance, so it's no surprise to me that things are screaming along at breakneck pace. I also think Sarah does have an emotional take on this whole estate. You know, it came with a very checkered history, and I think it's good for her that she's doing this work. What I'm concerned about is they must have an overall plan for the whole estate. How do you think we could calm things down and impose some kind of strategy? Your dad's working all the hours, 24/7, your mum says.
Yes, absolutely, he
And
is.
is he feeling the strain?
Yeah, I think he is. He's having his moments. I mean, he's looking good this week. We got him into bed and we got him away from here, and we got him to stop thinking about it for a few hours. But it's definitely an issue that needs to be addressed, and it needs to be addressed soon.
Ruth's concerned that the Corytons are still trying to do too much themselves, so she's come up with a plan. She wants them to prepare for a press launch, which could give the business publicity and help forge good relations with journalists. By inviting local people connected to Pentillie, the family will get a taste of what it will be like to open the estate up.
So what about getting some journalists in, particularly people who write for the garden magazines? Because I think if they were given a private tour of the areas that you've shown me, the mausoleum and up in the American garden, all those things, that would give you some feeling about what it's like to share this house with people.
Yeah, loved it.
Yeah,
but I mean, it's just, we've been talking about doing exactly that. And I hadn't really sort of thought about it, strange enough, for the promotion of Pentillie, but naively enough.
Why were you against it then?
Because I want people to just be here and come and see it.
But clearly, Sarah is still very emotional about the whole process.
What is the core product here? What is the thing that makes it tick? What is the thing that makes it work? It's you two loving it to pieces and wanting to share this with people. That actually is your strength.
Gonna work.
With just a few weeks before the press launch, there's a great deal to do. But despite Ruth's words of warning, the Corytons are still taking on many aspects of the project themselves, including designing the Pentillie brand.
The card is smarter with it on the side, but I don't like headed paper with it on the side. I think it looks a bit like
I like it much better, that the writing paper in the centre without any lines.
Or do you like it like that, with it slightly off to the side?
Slightly off to the side, did I say? Yes, because it was... Yeah, it was that one, but without those lines. And then I quite like that, but without the...
Well, Mama, whatever you decide...
We stick with.
I think if you... I prefer the one on the side.
No, 2 against 1 street, you're dead meat.
Fine.
The family have finally chosen the colour for the house, without the expert help Ruth advised.
How's it going? It doesn't come off as well as it did the other side.
To give the press an idea of how the finished rooms will be styled, Sarah has created some mood boards with the help of a local haberdasher.
Hi, Graham.
Hello.
How many more rotten windows have you found?
We've got 2 burnt off and ready for priming.
Oh, have you?
And I'll have another 2 burnt off today. Only another 46 windows to go.
But the work is progressing slowly, as the Corytons have decided to use an unusual paint.
It's not like a normal paint that we use in England. This is a mineral one that comes from Germany, and it seems much, much more tricky to apply. And I'm not sure I'd have gone down this route if I'd known how difficult it was. It's meant to last 30 years, and the amount of grief it's causing me, I hope it does, because I don't want to do it again. Yeah, press day is, what, 2 weeks' time? Yeah, we can do that. A bit tight.
Sadly, their efforts are dogged by paint problems and bad weather. And by the day before the press launch, it becomes clear that instead of a bright new exterior, the journalists will see Pentillie covered in scaffolding. But despite the stress, Sarah's keen to put on a brave face.
The scaffolding is... It'll be moved from this side of the house. This any minute now. It should have been done today. In fact, I'm not quite sure why it hasn't. But you can... It's clear of all its sort of netting that was up, so you've got an idea of the colour now. And if you don't like it... tough.
There's stuff to be done, but the things that haven't happened, there's not really much time to get them done between now and tomorrow morning, so it is what it is. And hopefully it'll be wonderful.
Done. Dirty oven. Perfect buns.
The day of the press launch has finally arrived, and there's still a great deal to do. It's an extremely stressful time, but the Corytons are determined to put on a good show. But are they ready to present Pentillie to the locals and the journalists?
This is my final visit to Pentillie, and it's press day, which of course is incredibly important because this is Ted and Sarah's chance to really show Pentillie off. I'm going to be interested to see how much work they've done, but more importantly, are they going to run the day in a professional way, or is it going to be full of emotion and all the historical baggage?
But straight away, Ruth's in for a shock.
So, what ghastly wounds have you been inflicting on your house?
It looks a bit mottled, doesn't it?
It's terrible. What is it?
It was the bodge-up repair they did 20 years ago.
So are we going to provide the press with not just dark glasses, but black blindfolds when they arrive?
Well, we'll give them something to laugh about anyway, won't we?
Oh, dear.
It will get better.
Ruth suggested that they consult a paint expert, but the Corytons decided on the final colour themselves.
It's a little more parsnip-coloured than I had expected. Did you ever have... I suggested a chap who's a paint expert, you know, does all the National Trust properties. Did he ever come down?
No. We talked to a paint expert and then we thought, well, it's a colour we're going to have to like, so we'll do it that colour.
If it actually clashes in a really vile way with the red brick, which I'm slightly concerned about, you could take it down a shade, you know, creamify it a bit, and it wouldn't look weird.
We could.
Yeah.
But I listened to what you said, and you said it's a big building, you've got to be positive. So
well, I agree with that.
It's a positive colour.
I agree with that, and it is, and it's a friendly colour. So, I mean, it looks as if everything is very behind. Is that right?
Yeah, it is a bit. Yeah.
Despite what Ted says, I think he's really rattled about this whole project, and the colour actually is much better when you stand down on the terrace and you've got the grey walls. I mean, the thing is, it's not vile, but it could have been so much better. And I personally would have taken advice on this from a real expert in the field. It's too big a building, too important, and it's not enough to say, well, we quite like it. What's really disappointing, though, is the scaffolding still being up and the press coming.
But the scaffolding isn't Ruth's only disappointment. She's not overly impressed with Sarah's interior design mood boards either.
There's nothing innately wrong with them, except it's incredibly traditional. It's very country house, Hotel 1984. And my problem is that I think she should be using professional help for this kind of thing, along with the outside paint colour. This is a house of architectural importance and something that really should sing with its strength and its force of design. They're missing a trick here. I think, you know, Sarah and Ted just going off doing their own things. You know, they need somebody to bring this all together. It just feels too fragmented.
Ruth heads to the kitchen to greet Sarah and Sammy, but conversation quickly turns to the mood boards and Sarah's choice of a local haberdasher.
I enjoy her taste enormously, and I think to be able to decide within probably the best part of an hour what you're going to do in 5 rooms is fairly full-on connection with somebody.
Is this woman absolutely at the top of her tree? Does she completely understand this architecture? Is she going to give you a design? Well, can I just tell you from the mood boards? Right, OK, I'll just come clean. The mood...
Not all of those fabrics are there on the...
No, but just the general feel of it. I was doing that in 1982 at Hindlesham Hall, and I think times have moved on. To me, it just looks dated.
What makes them dated, and what makes an opinion so...
No, it is very subjective.
Yeah,
there is no absolutes. Absolutely, and that's where I'm trying to caveat it by saying at the end of the day, you have got to love it. But I would just like to have felt that if you'd had somebody in here who hadn't just done what I regard as quite an ordinary treatment with this, and also quite a dated... Sorry, Sarah.
I absolutely can't run with that.
OK, no, it's fine. You're allowed not to run with it. You and I are allowed to disagree. It's fine, you know, it's fine. Okay. Let's just happily disagree. When I had Hindlesham, which is like this, a building of great significance, I actually did go to people who really, really knew about both the architecture and about paint and about everything else. But I didn't just get the little local woman in from Ipswich to come and... I would feel I was being fraudulent to myself if I didn't say that I think it could be better. Everything is fairly predictable, and I think it could be less predictable.
Doctor, I really want to talk to you about it now.
Doesn't want to talk to me at all anymore.
No, I really...
The knife is here. It's ready to plunge into my guts.
Preparation continues, but with the press due at any moment, Ruth's concerned that Sarah's taken her comments to heart.
Are you all right?
No, I'm not, Ruth. I'm deeply upset. No, don't come any minute. No, I'm really upset. Don't film this, thank you.
But why are you
No,
really
I don't want to be
upset?
filmed.
No,
I'm not going to be filmed.
Tell me why.
I think you're being very harsh, and I think that's most unnecessary.
I'm pretty sure Sarah's not speaking to me at the moment because she stomped off camera, very upset with me because I had the temerity to not agree with everything that she's been doing. I don't think they're doing a bad job at all. I'm merely trying to say that I think they could do a better job. And what really bothers me is that this shouldn't end up being a sort of provincial kind of treatment, this house. It needs something of a national scale.
After an emotional start to the day, can the Corytons still manage to impress their important guests?
I'm concerned about the seating arrangements, which frankly look a combination between a youth hostel party and somebody's suburban barbecue.
Pentillie Castle has been hidden away for nearly 30 years. But today, the Coryton family are throwing open the gates to a new era. Despite an earlier disagreement, Ruth and the Corytons put their differences to one side to welcome the guests. Journalists from local and national publications have come for a sneak preview of what the Corytons intend to offer.
I might have made a mistake and made it too strong.
Local people and ex-staff members from Pentillie's past have also been invited.
Hello, Roger. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
How are you?
If the family impress the journalists, the coverage could be invaluable in making their venture a success.
We grew up on a farm on the estate, but the old lady didn't like the family.
And help secure Pentillie's future. With the workmen still hard at it, it's clear that Pentillie is a work in progress. But the guests seem to be enjoying the sunny terrace and elderflower champagne.
Well, we've got a number of journalists here from both national and local newspapers, which is jolly good, but it doesn't feel very well organised at the moment. And I'm also concerned about the seating arrangements, which frankly look a combination between a youth hostel party and somebody's suburban barbecue. Style. I'd like to see a little more style attached to all these things, but, you know, it's very homely, and hopefully the journalists will see what can be done with this house and hopefully what will be done with it.
Have we done the risk assessment? Can we take the lid off?
Pentillie's amazing history will be key to their marketing campaign. So the return of Sir James Tilley's restored statue has been perfectly timed.
That's it. Go on.
The Corytons have arranged to take their guests on a tour of the estate, including the kitchen gardens and the mausoleum, before ending up at the bathing house on the banks of the Tamar, in time for tea. To show the journalists everything Pentillie has to offer, the Corytons have even laid on a boat trip. And it's a special occasion for the local guests as well. It's the first time in 30 years that local boatman Josh has been allowed to moor here.
I mean, were you very aware that nobody was welcome on the Pentillie land
when
in the old days?
Lady was here, nobody dare land. They didn't put a foot ashore anywhere.
I think it's nice that Ted and Sarah want to open that up and make it more public in that sense,
It's wonderful that we could come down and we were so welcome and they're so lovely now and the freedom is brilliant. We were afraid, well, not afraid, but we just kept away. And the whole village is around. Are really over the moon about really exciting.
I think it's going to look absolutely stunning when it's weathered a bit.
All the locals seem to be delighted, including architect Jonathan Mansfield.
Every time you meet another person who's involved in the Pentillie project, you realise how nice they are and how much their hearts are in the right spot. They all want to see Pentillie work. It might be friendship, you're saying, are you?
Well, no,
I think it's good.
What worries me is that I do think there's enormous warmth of spirit and a real desire to get it right. I just worry, you know, we've got the hearts, have we got the heads as well?
Whatever we do, we've got to make them money rather than be going out in
Well, I hope all their friends are as wise and nice as you are. I'm sure they are.
Oh. Well, thank you so much. But you remember, you're part of the team.
Yes, no,
And
yes, but I think I'm becoming increasingly aware my part of the team is to challenge, you see. I think
that's all
maybe.
right.
Is that
It's
okay?
That's perfectly acceptable.
Despite earlier teething troubles, the guests are clearly impressed by Pentillie. Ruth is keen to share the news with Sarah.
Every single person who's either worked here, lives in the surrounding villages, has just said how unbelievably wonderful it is that you and Ted own the place, that you have opened it up, that you've made everyone welcome, that people have not been here for 30 years, and how utterly delighted and thrilled they are with your welcome to them.
It has been very special, and I mean, without all of those people, we just wouldn't be, we wouldn't be functioning.
But have the Corytons done enough to win over the journalists with their bold plans for Pentillie's future?
A lot of country house hotels in Britain, when people are choosing a venue for a wedding or a special event or whatever, they're looking for just something a bit extra. And then I think that's what this place has got.
I don't know how they're going to manage to keep the mystery, the time warp, and bring it up to the standards people expect. Obviously, they're working with their hearts. Otherwise, it becomes just a business.
Britain is full of houses like this that have been neglected, and it's down to the unsung heroes who are willing to take this on to make sure this survives.
The relationships formed today could help the Corytons for years to come. All that remains is to find out whether the family feel positive about the event and their decision to take Pentillie on.
I'm quite knackered now,
Yeah,
but it
well,
was
I'm
a
sure
good day.
you put a lot of work into it.
What did you think?
Yeah, no, it was lovely. It was lovely. I'm very glad the weather cleared out.
I quite like having people here. Don't know why.
It's fun to share it, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, you've helped us very much in terms of the advice and making us think bigger and all of those kinds of things. I don't know whether we're quite thinking as big as you would like us to, but I certainly think that we will get there.
You have actually brought this place back to life. You've brought everybody back to it, and you have created something which I think is very special. And as I say, I felt personally touched, and I have nothing to do with this family or this part of the world.
We might have brought people back to it also, but actually they've allowed us to come back. They've allowed us in.
I really admire your energy and your enthusiasm. I would like to think also that, you know, you're really enjoying it. Are you enjoying it?
I've absolutely loved what has been happening. Yeah, and it's a fantastic challenge, and it's been absolutely lovely.